Hello ladies and gentlemen, and welcome back to my channel for another Hot Toys Spider-Man 1/6 scale figure unboxing and review. Today, we're taking a look at Andrew Garfield's The Amazing Spider-Man. Now I know on the box it says The Amazing Spider-Man 2, but we all know this is Andrew based off his appearance in No Way Home. Now I got mine from toyswonderland.com, link for that is in the description below. They have pay in 4 and a loyalty program. While you're down there, why not hit that subscribe, bell notification icon, and join button, so you're notified as soon as a brand new Hot Toys review goes live on the channel. Okay, right off the bat, let's discuss the whole Amazing Spider-Man 2 thing. The reason why they went with this license over, say, No Way Home, is because they wanted to include an unmasked Andrew Garfield head sculpt. And I don't think Marvel has the likeness rights for Andrew Garfield. So, to include that head sculpt, they had to go back into the well and use the TASM 2 license. That way they can reuse a head sculpt they made previously, no need for licensor approval, they already had that back in the day. That's just conjecture, but I'm pretty sure that's what happened because Bandai with their SH Figuarts Andrew, they had to cancel the unmasked head sculpt, they could not get licensor approval. Could totally be wrong on that though. Front and center, Andrew Garfield whipping away. Love the vibrant color palette here. In the background for this almost Black Widow hourglass style shape symbol. Got a bunch of cracks and web lines going on. Some images from TASM 2. As well as some blue lightning from Blue Electro, also from TASM 2. All of the images in the background, they're also metallic. They pop really nicely. Then down below, The Amazing Spider-Man. Going with a white spider symbol, that's a bold choice. It almost reminds me of the PS4 Advanced Suit symbol. We've got some more metallic lightning on the side, we also have the suit pattern and some shadowing top and bottom to add a little bit more depth. I cannot overstate how good this metallic looks. In person, it's pretty darn stunning. We've got the hourglass symbol back here too, multiple different cracks, more lightning, a Spidey symbol, as well as warnings and legal info. I also dig the fact that this web does work its way all the way around the packaging back to the front where it's being held by Andrew. Going with red and the suit pattern on the slipcover, then blue on the inside part of the packaging. Very clever Hot Toys. It's a callback to Spidey's suit colors. Speaking of Spidey, an open window showcasing the figure inside. On the side of the box, The Amazing Spider-Man. Around the back, with great power comes great responsibility. And this image of Spidey looking up at that quote, I really like that, it's kind of powerful. We also have the TASM symbol in the background. Now I'm pretty curious to compare this figure to the original one from Amazing Spider-Man 2. And you can bet that we definitely will. The No Way Home line is the gift that keeps on giving for a lot of collectors. If, say for instance, you're not collecting No Way Home and you are just putting together an Amazing Spider-Man display, this guy works for you. Maybe you missed out on the original one, or some of the things that didn't quite hit as hard as Hot Toys were expecting, like the magnetic hands. Now they can go back and rectify those decisions and fix them with this new version. So this guy will work for a lot of collectors. First in-hand impressions? You know what? So far so good. I'm liking the feel of this body in hand, and I'm noticing some improvements over the 1.0. What we are going to do now, though, is get all of his accessories laid out in the light box and take a closer look at everything he comes with. Starting off with the display base first. It's done in Hot Toys' usual hexagonal style with the glossy Amazing Spider-Man symbol in the middle of this red textured background. It does say Amazing Spider-Man 2 up top, but not around the front. For the nameplate, it simply says Amazing Spider-Man. So alongside Tobey's display base that says Friendly Neighborhood Spider-Man, yeah, I think we can all see what you're doing, Hot Toys. This works well. We do have a dynamic flight pole up top and a spring-loaded waist clamp. I would caution against using this waist clamp for a long period of time, just because they do tend to dig into the rubbery suit material if you do leave them there for a while. When it comes to webs, we get the usual suspects. The first tray has the right angle web up top, meant for swinging poses. We also have the longer webs that you can attach the funnel attachment to. And down the bottom, the rounded tip webs. They are shorter and they're meant for mid-web whipping poses. They're all cast in the same cloudy translucent plastic. But my favorite web is this one. When you have it attached to his hand, top and bottom, It kinda looks like he's mid-swing and he's grabbed a bunch of webbing it's spooled up around his hand. It's the most dynamic of the bunch. Next up, an unmasked Andrew Garfield head sculpt and a mask. Before you ask, no, you cannot pop this mask on the head sculpt because his hair is sculpted, so you can imagine how weird that would look. The mask is made of material and the webs are screen printed. The lenses are separate sculpted pieces of plastic. This is just meant to be held or placed on the display base as some set dressing. Now the head sculpt is the same as the TASM 1 head sculpt. We'll do a comparison and we'll pop this on the body and we'll discuss it in a lot more detail on the actual figure. And lastly, all the hands. Literally, he comes with so many hands. This is the most amount of hands that I think I've seen in a while. Now for the web pooping ones, on the palm you can actually replace this panel. Why would you want to do that? Well, if you just want him posed without the web, it can look like this one on the right here. Or if you want to plug the web in so it's actually firing out of the web shooter, that's what you'd use this for. This little web textured section with the port around the front. You plug it in, and it's a pretty convincing effect. It's not perfect if you don't line it up with the web shooter, so make sure you do. I didn't notice this about the TASM 2 suit. There are some little grippy textured sections on each of the fingers. That's a really nice little attention to detail. There's also the activation switch for the web shooters on the palm of each of the hands that you can see the palm. We do have raised web lines on all of them. We've got some closed fists, some open palm hands, the pointing fingers for the meme, some web gripping hands, and also a peace sign hand. Why not? What we are going to do now, though, is get Spider-Man himself out here. Standing straight up and down in the light box, no crazy poses or accessories or anything like that. I had quite a few assumptions at the start of this video, and we are still fairly close to the start. I can already tell you I was wrong on quite a few of them. Reused head sculpt, wrong. Reused body, wrong. This guy, he's better than I was expecting. I thought this was going to be a lazy rehash. It's not. It's surprisingly exceptional. The body, the proportions are so much nicer, so is the articulation, we'll touch on that later. The outfit on top of the body has been refined, it looks sharper, the tailoring is crisper, the red is more metallic and deeper. There are still a few things that they haven't updated though, such as the color of the lenses. Overall, this guy is very solid. Up close and personal, kicking things off with Spidey's masked head sculpt. We will be trying out the Peter Parker head sculpt in just a second. Now this is attached at the base of the neck, so it's a separate piece, and yes, you can see the seam line. They have quite cleverly put one of the web lines at the bottom, so it does nicely disguise it from a distance. Up close, yeah, you're gonna see it. I'm fine with that, because I like the idea of having a skin tone neck with my Peter Parker head sculpts. If this is the only way to get that done, then yeah, I'm all for it. Now the overall shape and size of the mask sculpt underneath the fabric, because this is actual fabric over the top of a sculpt, it's a new shape. I thought it was going to be reused from the original. It isn't, and it looks way more proportionate. It's slightly more squat, a little bit wider, and they've got the proportions of the nose down below the eyes and having this circle also below the eyes. It just looks so much more accurate than the 1.0. The fabric is a perfect match between the body and the head sculpt. The web lines are sitting proud of the red. They're also a little bit metallic, so they do stand out when the light hits them. Now, unfortunately, it's not all perfect. The lenses, they're the wrong color. In No Way Home, and even in TASM 2, they were significantly brighter than this, and this is the color that Hot Toys used originally. The glossy black edges, correct. The super high gloss on the outside, the honeycomb pattern underneath that, all good. But not the color, they're just too dark to be accurate. Now the bump at the top has been eliminated entirely because there's a channel in the head sculpt that the stitching actually sticks into. The web lines are not super clean around that area, it's still better than having that little notch or bump up the top like we used to see with MCU Spideys. This, it does look very flush and form-fitting. Now there's also a seam line down the front and at the back where the mask is stitched together. I reckon that was unavoidable, and they've done it as clean as possible. There's even a web line that's meant to disguise that seam there. So they're aware of it. They want to make sure that they have web lines where all the seams are, so when you're not lighting it with super harsh studio lights, it should look nice and seamless. Speaking of seamless, Thank goodness, finally, a skin tone neck. Because if you think about it, when Spidey rips off his mask, his suit doesn't just randomly continue up underneath his head. You can always see the neck, you can see the Adam's apple, you can see skin texture. So I'm glad that finally they've figured out how to do this. This isn't the first time we've seen this. In fact, the only other Spidey to feature a skin tone neck before this guy was the Amazing Spider-Man 1 Spidey. Could almost say that the Amazing Spider-Man figures, they were pioneers. They had some pretty cool little innovations, this being one of them. Swapping out the head sculpt at the base of the neck rather than the top, very clever. This collar is fabric, so the match is perfect. The skin tone matches between the head sculpt and the neck itself, although there is a seam down the side, which is a little bit unsightly. Now, this head sculpt is reuse from the Amazing Spider-Man 1 figure. That's not a bad thing because I like the head sculpt, but at the same time, I would have liked to have seen a new one. He just looks too young for his appearance in No Way Home. If this was the only way to give us an Andrew Garfield head sculpt, I understand. Still, a new one would have been the way to go for me. The hair has flow to it, it's nice and big and boofy. The expression looks like he's about to say something, maybe a quip of some kind. He was quite a funny Spidey. You also have an open mouth, which helps sell that expression. The skin tone is a little bit lighter than the original one, and there's natural shading to mimic complexion. So overall, even though this head sculpt isn't perfect, I still like it. While we're on head sculpts, no, this is not the new figure, this is the 1.0, the original. If you want to use the Andrew Garfield head sculpt on this body, it's actually the same neck connector, so you totally can. It doesn't look quite as good as it does on the new figure because the proportions are a little bit wonky. It's an option. If you want to have both displayed, one with the mask and one without, yeah, I'm actually tempted to do this myself. Or if you want to have the Amazing Spider-Man 1 Andrew Garfield head sculpt on the Amazing Spider-Man 2, this is the new figure's body, you can just take the head sculpt off the neck because it is separate, pop this head sculpt on, and while it's not a perfect skin tone match, this one just is way more detailed. It also works. If you like the battle damage, yeah, go for it. Let's talk about upgrades, the first of which is the body. This body is significantly better. The proportions and the articulation. The shoulders are much more rounded and defined. He's got traps sloping down to the shoulders. You can make out the biceps underneath the suit, pecs, abs, muscles down the sides. It's all there. The red sections are stretchy spandex with that brick pattern printed on the surface. And over the top of all that, the metallic raised web lines. And the spider symbol, which is significantly thicker so it stands out way more than the original. Everything is metallic. The red has a sheen, the spider symbol, the web lines, they all pick up the light really nicely. The blue sections are this screen printed rubbery material, so you will have to be a little bit more careful when it comes to posing. You can also get his arms completely down by his sides. If they won't go any further, don't worry, they will. Just grab them, push them up at the same time, and they'll click in position. He also has his web shooters on, and they are attached to the suit, so when you are posing him and you find that they're not in alignment, it's alright. It's spandex, you can just move it around. They have ditched the magnetic hands, which I love. This is so much better than those weird magnetic hands. Around the back, he also has the spider symbol, and this time, the red is significantly more saturated, so it does stand out against the blue. I just wish the blue wasn't this rubbery material. Having all the panel lines and the grid texture pattern on the surface and having the line work down the sides and around the back, maybe this is the only way to have this much detail on the surface of the fabric. I reckon they could have done something else and it still would have looked just as good as this. Because when it comes to posing, it will bunch and it will wrinkle and maybe crease and stick to itself. You will have to be careful. The boots are fused to the suit, they're no longer separate pieces. The web lines are still raised and you can still make out that pattern over the top. Plus, there is no bunching at the ankles. This is how you should be doing Spidey ankles hot toys. We don't want bunching, we don't want the suit tucking into the ankle joint. This looks completely seamless and very, very natural. They have dialed down the size of the shoes. These look a little bit smaller than the 1.0. You do still have fully sculpted tread on the underside, and some red wash in the crevices to bring out all of that sculpt work. For a quick side-by-side comparison, on the left, the new and improved, let's just call him the No Way Home version of Amazing Spider-Man. and on the right, the Amazing Spider-Man 2 version from back in the day. I still like the original, but the new one is so much nicer. The body, so much more proportionate. He's taller, he's been stretched out a little bit, his shoulders are sitting up higher, so he looks way more realistic. The colour of the suit is different. The original was brighter with the red, but darker with the blue. The new one is the reverse of that. The red is darker and the blue is ever so slightly lighter. There's more of metallic sheen on the red, and all of that works together so very well. If you were right now deciding whether or not to upgrade to sell your original and get this new one, I know we're still early on in the review. Yeah, go ahead and do that. You won't regret it. Well, this is a guy we haven't seen in a while. It's Blue Electro. He will be upgraded, switched out for the No Way Home version, the new, whenever he eventually releases. Right now, if you want to represent Amazing Spider-Man 2 in your collection, you have this Electro. Okay, he pairs up really nicely with the new Amazing Spider-Man figure. I know what you'll want to see. You want the pointing meme. I do too. We will have to wait for Friendly Neighborhood Spidey. When we get him in, we'll have Toby, Andrew, and Tom all standing in a circle with their masks off, pointing at one another, just like that behind-the-scenes photo. Integrated Suit Spidey is shorter than Amazing Spider-Man, accurate. And we're 2 out of 3 here. We just have one Spidey left to complete this trio. Dude, this is a night and day difference. I thought the original on the right, it would have the same body as the new one, just with a couple of tweaks and changes, maybe a different suit. No, the head sculpt is a completely different shape and size, the neck is slightly shorter, no longer do you have this shelf around the traps area, and the shoulders, they're properly defined. The new one, it looks way more proportionate. The chest is no longer as lumpy as the original. He has a booty this time, whereas the 1.0 was completely flat. Believe it or not, some people commented that on my review of this guy. The red is more saturated and more metallic. The chest symbol stands out more on the web lines. You also can see the pattern better on the new one. They've ditched the weird magnetic hand gimmick. The blue is slightly lighter and more reflective than the original, and they fixed the boots. No longer are they separate pieces, and no longer are they capped underneath with rubber so that you can't pose the ankles. With the new version, you can pose the ankles, and they've still maintained that smooth finish without any bunching down there. Going over articulation. Now that we know this is not the same body as the 1.0, I'm pretty interested to find out what they've changed. Starting off with the masked head sculpt, if you find that the neck connector detaches on you very easily, you are not alone, mine does as well. So maybe, to save yourself the hassle of fighting that neck connector detaching on you when you're moving the head sculpt, take it off separately from the body, pose it, and then pop it back on. For the sake of this video, I will try my best to keep it on the body. The masked head sculpt has the fabric to contend with, so it might be a little bit more limited than the unmasked head sculpt. Looking forward on a double ball peg to there, looking back to there, you also get swivel as well as pivot side to side. The arms will go up to there on clicky ratchets, they also go very flush down by his sides, going forward and back. Butterfly joint at the shoulder that hinges up and down. Swivel at the bicep, double bend at the elbow going just past 90, his bicep collides with his forearm. Then for his wrist peg, it's a hinge and swivel. The torso crunches forward on 2 joints, one at the midsection and another down at the hips. They're also on ratchets, which is different compared to the 1.0. Crunching forward to there, going back to there, you also get swivel and pivot side to side. The legs will go forward on ratchets to there, they will go out on clickier ratchets to there, swivel at the upper thigh, double bend at the knee going past 90. The double ball pegs at the ankles are covered in fabric. This time, they hold their positions. Unlike last time, they just didn't. You also get swivel as well as ankle tilt. Technically, you do have a toe joint, but it's not ratcheted and you're fighting this rubber sole, so it only goes forward a little. Moving on to the 3 cool and 3 annoying things. The first annoying thing is the QC on my Spidey is just all over the place. His little circle is off to one side of his mask, you can see this spot on his lens, and the web line around the front, right on the front of the head sculpt, is wonky. The second annoying thing, and it pains me to say this because I like this head sculpt, it's the reused Andrew Garfield sculpt. Back in the day with Amazing Spider-Man 1, it was good, it was passable. Nowadays, they could do so much better. This head sculpt might even have moving eyes if they did a new one. I understand why they didn't because of likeness rights issues, and they still improved it. More skin texture, the eyes look more lifelike, they did away with the battle damage, there's 5 o'clock shadow, all of that stuff is good. A new one with the moving eyes, that would have been the icing on the cake. The third annoying thing is how inaccessible the toe joint is. It's there, and it's functional, if only the sole wasn't as thick as it is. As it stands, you really have to fight against it to get any movement out of that toe joint. This was softer, or thinner, or there was a split at the bottom, it would have worked a lot better. The first cool thing is the engineering with the head sculpt. Having the seam line be one of the web lines and finally giving us a skin tone neck on a Spidey. This makes me so happy. The second cool thing is even though this does say The Amazing Spider-Man 2 on top, having a hexagonal base with the Spidey symbol in the middle and saying Amazing Spider-Man around the front versus just saying Spider-Man, paired up alongside the Friendly Neighborhood Spider-Man where it says that on the front of his display base, this is going to blend in really nicely with the No Way Home figures. The third cool thing is the brand new body. It looks so much nicer than the original and the articulation is actually usable, fancy that. There are ratchet joints everywhere, so the legs, the arms, the torso, it holds in position. The original? Yeah, not so much. Wrapping up on Hot Toys, The Amazing Spider-Man 2 / Spider-Man No Way Home, Andrew Garfield as The Amazing Spider-Man. This figure is amazing. If you were sitting here hoping that you had the original and that was good enough at the start of this video, I'm so sorry. I think you and I both know that's not the case. This is a worthy upgrade. It's a top to bottom overhaul. You are missing out on some of the accessories from the original like the I'm Sick Spidey bits and pieces and the backpack. I don't care about any of that. If you do and you have the 1.0 and you really value those bits and pieces, maybe hang on to them when you sell him, or just hang on to the 1.0 entirely. That is up to you. For me, it's all about the figure itself, and this guy is outstanding. The proportions are way better. He actually looks realistic, like a dude in a suit, versus the 1.0. It was all kinds of funky looking, and the ankles didn't work, and the knees didn't work correctly, and he had to stand in this weird position just to be upright, or he'd fall over constantly. He had the magnetic hands, which was very odd. And he didn't have an unmasked head sculpt. This one does. It's a reused one. I'm okay with that because it's painted better and it's got a skin tone neck. So at the end of this, do I think this guy is an essential upgrade if you do have the original? Yes. Do I think he's necessary if you don't have the original? Hell yes. Go ahead and get this guy. You will not regret it. Now I got mine from toyswonderland.com. Link for that is in the description below. They have pay in 4 and a loyalty program. While you're down there, why not hit that subscribe, bell notification icon, and join button if you like the sound of seeing your name in the end credits of my reviews. Like, comment, and subscribe, and we'll catch you in the next video.